Hi, and welcome to this week's Wu Wei Wisdom Life Lessons teaching. It's great to be back with you all. This week, we are exploring the topic of affirmations and intention setting, two powerful tools to support your personal growth. You will discover the vital difference between affirmations, aspirations, and intentions, and how to create and use affirmations and intentions that are authentic, empowering, and aligned with the natural flow of life. Okay, David, so let's start with some definitions. What is the difference between an affirmation, an aspiration, and an intention?
Okay, thank you. From my view, and coming from a Taoist perspective, an affirmation, it kind of tells you you are affirming something that is true. So affirmation, you are making an affirmation, something that you believe to be true. So when you affirm something in every core of your being, you should know this is the truth. And you should be able to give it the Shen test. And remember what the Shen test is? It's something you would say to your physical child. An aspiration, to me, is like wishful thinking, something I would like to happen, the way I would like the world to be. And this is where the inner child gets involved. The inner child gets involved in aspirations because the inner child loves an aspiration, because if you don't reach that kind of magic wishful thinking, it's got a stick to beat you with. It can then use, oh, well, look, it can compare you. You didn't do as good as you're not reaching your true potential. Other people are doing more than you. So an aspiration is always like, when I'm doing this work, it always reminds me of that cartoon, with the donkey and the carrot. Yeah. The carrot is just dangling out of the way of the donkey. Now, the inner child will tell you that you need aspirations to keep driving you.
And we did a teaching, and I'll put a link in the show notes a few weeks ago on the wishful thinking and the inner child. And this is where the kind of aspirations,
that's right,
fairy tale stuff comes in here.
That's right. Now, setting an intention is very important in Taoism. They call it Yi, Y-I. And if you listen to any of my meditations, I always say at the end, Yi Dao, Qi Dao. So Yi Dao, your intention, Dao, the flow of your intention, Qi Dao, the energy follows your flow. So setting an intention, Yi, is based in an affirmation where you are now truthfully and where you truthfully believe you can go to. And here's the Taoist teaching: one small step at a time.
Okay, so there's a lot there, David. I just want to pick some of that apart. But briefly, what you've said is affirmations are about being truthful about you in the present moment, your life currently, but in a positive but truthful statement of truth, of this is me now, the kind of I am statement, but it's got to be real, it's got to be truthful, it's got to be honest and with integrity. And then for the future in wants and wishes and desires, that's where the intention comes in. So intentions rather than aspirations, which is more fuzzy, wishful thinking, more perfectionist thinking, led by the inner child. I just want to pick you up for our new listeners. You mentioned Shen test. So in the Wu Wei Wisdom teachings and Taoist teaching, Shen is like the authentic self, the spiritual self. And so what you were saying, when you do the Shen test about, is this affirmation truthful? What you mean is you're doing a self-check. Would what I'm saying here now in an affirmation to myself, would I say this to my child or someone who's very important to me, and as if it was the truth? And if you wouldn't say it to, say, your child, then you shouldn't say it to yourself. So it's like a self-referencing check of truth and authenticity.
Yes, because our mind, influenced by the inner child, can get very confused. So, for instance, if your physical child came home from school and they're 6, 7, 8, 9, and they said, "Mom, I'm not good enough," you wouldn't say, "That's right, sweetheart, you're actually not good enough," because it wouldn't be the truth. But you're quite happy to say to yourself. And when you say that to yourself, you cannot start, you haven't got a launch pad for a true affirmation or a true intention, because your launch pad is faulty right at the beginning.
Okay, David. So you mentioned there also about energy and how affirmations and intention setting plays into energy work, the vibration you're sending out, the law of attraction work. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so really, the law of attraction is what we're talking about. Yi Dao, Qi Dao, is getting the launch pad, the base correct. What is the truth? What is my intention? Is it just made up? Is it wishful thinking? Or is it something that I truly believe I can achieve? Again, going back to the Shen test, if a child came back home and said, "Mom, I only got 2 out of 10 of my spelling," you wouldn't say to them, "Well, that means you're not good enough or you can't cope." You would say, "Okay, let's do some work on your spelling. Every night we'll spell a new word." And you teach them how to begin to learn something new that they might be creating an emotion. And so this is why this is so important, to get the launch pad correct, the affirmation, speaking the truth, and then setting your intention. How do you want to go? And the word intention is much more important than the word goal, because in the word intention, it allows you that little bit of wiggle room.
Yeah.
Goal means it's something you've got to reach. Now, the inner child will love the idea of goal, because, again, it gives it a stick. Because if you don't reach your goal, it can whack you with it. So the inner child all the time this is when you notice the inner child is so clever and so subtle, because it works against you. Because the inner child doesn't want to be accountable. He wants to blame something else or someone else.
And I think, David, the inner child or the ego, that part of our mind that is driven by beliefs of not being good enough, not being able to cope, not being lovable, will always strive for perfection to prove itself. So if we're not careful, we end up making affirmations that are untrue. So we say, like, I am, 100% healthy, or I am, at my peak career, when we know deep down they're not true. Or we create future goals which are totally unrealistic, based on wishful thinking, fairy tale thinking. And then we know deep down they're not true and not realistic and not achievable. So in both instances, we're creating an affirmation or an intention or a goal which are unrealistic. And we know, because we know there is always that authentic Shen spiritual part of us that knows that these things are based on an untruth or a lie or a lack of integrity. That inner conflict between what we're saying and setting and the truth that we know deep down creates a discordance in our energy. And as you've said on all our law of attraction videos, and I can put a link in the show notes to our law of attraction playlist. There's lots of long form teachings on there about the Wu Wei Wisdom approach to the law of attraction. But that discordance of energy between what we know, we believe deep down to be true, and what we're verbalizing, saying through affirmations or goals, creates mixed messages in terms of the energy we're sending out to the universe. So that doubt, that actual doubt about this is not really achievable, this is not really who I am, means that the affirmations and intentions or goals just are ineffective.
You really hit on the core of the problem here, Alex, because over time we become so attuned to the voice of the inner child, which is the emotions. We're fearful, we're scared, we're anxiety, we can't cope. And we're so used to saying that, we kind of say it without thinking about it. And then, as you said, we have this inner truth, this Shen. You may want to call it your gut feeling, your intuition, your inner knowing, your true self. Again, what you would say to your child. You've got that voice, but it's so quiet, and it's like tuning a radio. You've tuned into the inner child. And then, of course, it's like, use another analogy, it's like the inner child driving the car. It's driving the car, and then if it crashes, it blames you and says, well, I'm a child, you shouldn't let me drive the car. So all the way, all the time, the inner child is looking for ways to hold up their hand and not be responsible, to be able to blame mainly you, it mainly blames you. So it will say, this time next year, I'll get a promotion, when probably a promotion isn't on the cards at all. Now you don't get the promotion. Now it starts to say, there you are, you didn't get the promotion, other people got a promotion, other people are doing better than you, they've got a better car, a better house, this, that, and the other. And so all the time, it's moving the accountability back onto you, and it's ducking out, and it's not taking responsibility.
And in a way that if we set affirmations or intentions that are based on inner child narrative, and we will not succeed because they're unrealistic, untruthful, then it becomes like a confirmation bias.
Well, it's even stronger than that, you see. If you follow the inner child, let's use what we call the 3 lies. I'm not good enough, I can't cope, I'm unlovable. If you set your life and use that as your launch pad, your foundation, you cannot be successful. It is impossible because they're 3 lies, and if you follow that line, it will lead to a false outcome. You are diving deeper into the mire. Now, the inner child then has a stick to beat you with, and it will say, there's the proof you can't cope.
Yeah.
There's the proof. This is what a lot of my clients will say, as when I say, why do you believe you're not good enough? And they say, well, evidence. I say, well, what's the evidence? And then they tell me, perhaps again, I just use I didn't get the promotion. But then I ask, well, if you don't believe you're good enough for the promotion, how do you expect to get the promotion?
Yeah.
Do you think that somebody else is going to override and give you something you don't think you can do? And so the inner child sets up a scenario. I call it a self-fulfilling philosophy. You call it confirmation bias. Sets up confirmation bias to prove the wrong.
So, for example, rather than saying an inner child or ego-led affirmation, which is, I am 100% healthy. Say we're in a state of poor health, and affirming, I am 100% healthy, which would be a lot of what a lot of teachers would guide you to say in an affirmation. A more authentic, truthful, Shen-based affirmation would be, every day I am improving, or every day I am taking care of my health. And so that day on day, whatever, whether it's every day or every month, we can then have a confirmation bias in the other direction that, yes, things are slowly improving. Yes, I am taking care of my health. And then that starts a positive cycle rather than setting, an affirmation, I am 100% healthy. And then every day when we repeat it to ourselves, we know that's not true. We know that we've set a really overstretched affirmation for ourselves. So rather than it being a confirmation bias of the negative, we want to set something up that's a confirmation bias on the positive. And so if it was a intention, let's do the contrast between like an inner child ego-led intention or goal and a more authentic Shen-based intention. What would be the difference? Give me the contrast.
I think the best example of this, if you're a healthy person and you're overweight. Now, what happens then? You do not acknowledge that you had a part to play in being as overweight. The inner child doesn't want you to do that. It wants you to see yourself as the victim of being as overweight. Now, right now, then, the launch pad is incorrect. When I work with clients who have a weight problem, I always say the first step, the launch pad, is to say, I chose to be this weight.
And that sounds very harsh.
Very harsh. But isn't that the truth?
But just to drill down on that, David, what about if, people have like physical health complaints that precipitate that?
So if you listen to what I said at the beginning, if you're a normal person with a weight problem, now obviously if you've got physical problems or medical problems, this doesn't apply to you. But a normal person who goes on a New Year diet because they're 6 pounds, 8 pounds is overweight, is to say, I've chosen to be this weight. Now that would be a fantastic affirmation, because now you're absolutely in control. You've owned your situation. Now the next step is the intention. How do I change this? Well, first of all, do I want to change this? I might be comfortable going to McDonald's every day. I may be comfortable in having 2 donuts every day. And it's that truthfulness that sets the affirmation. So say, no, I'm not comfortable about this. I'm 8 pounds overweight. I'm a healthy person, but over the year, like we all do, I've slipped to 8 pounds overweight. Now, from that affirmation, now you set your intention. How do I lose this 8 pound? Well, I could exercise more. Now, do I really like exercising? Well, I could eat a little bit less. Do I really want to do that? And so it's that truth, that honesty. Now, an aspiration would say, next month I'm going to be back to my goal weight.
Yeah.
I don't have to do anything.
So just to be clear then, your intention, wouldn't your intention be that I will get back to my optimum weight?
No, that's what I'm saying. If you do it this way, then you ask yourself, is this truthful or is this wishful thinking?
So is this realistic?
Exactly.
And because then you have to think through, okay, how am I going to achieve this?
That's right.
Rather than just setting a goal and putting it, on autopilot and thinking it's going to happen.
So you could say, I'm going to do more exercise. I signed up for a gym. How many of us sign up for a gym, go twice and then never go again? So our intention is incorrect, because if your intention is truthful and you're based on your intention, then you will do it because you're being true to your spirit and your shen.
Yeah.
So saying, I'm 8 pounds as overweight. I know what I'll do. I'll join the gym and I'll go 3 times a week. You do it for 1 week and you stop going. Yeah. That wasn't a true intention. That was an aspiration. That was wishful thinking. Yeah. And so you've got to be able to judge yourself that when you speak this yi, I like to use the word yi, is this yi truthful, honest? Does it have integrity? Is it something you can stick to? Even if it's a dark, cold, windy morning, is your intention, your yi, stronger than that?
Yeah. So a couple of things I've heard you say there. When we set an affirmation, it's really important to take ownership of our responsibility for our current situation within the parameters of realism. So that could apply to, your weight. It could apply to a relationship issue. It could apply to a career issue, a financial issue. We have to be honest with ourselves about how much our current reality is because of our past choices. And that then sets, as you said, a beautiful, authentic, honest foundation for then creating a realistic, achievable, authentic intention. And so then the next thing you said is we can think big. We're not saying these intentions should be like watered down or weak or a compromise. We can still think big and positive in an empowering and stretching way. But when we set an intention in whatever element of our life, career, health, relationships, money, that we need to do another stress test on and say, in all honesty, the steps I'm going to need to take in order to achieve this intention, based on my past experience of what I know I'm capable of, is this achievable? So we need to do that self-referencing check.
I'd like to refer back to something you said earlier, because I'm sure there's people listening to this who are shouting at the screen. When you mentioned a medical condition, and at the beginning I wasn't talking about a medical condition, but I want to address that. So an affirmation may be, I am now experiencing a medical condition that honestly I had no part in playing. That would be an affirmation. Now, I have now got this medical condition. How do I make the best? How do I find an intention to improve this medical condition to the best of my ability? Yeah. So again, it's being truthful. If it's a medical condition that you had no part in playing, it was an accident, something happened, you were struck by something, and you had no part in playing, that is also an affirmation. That's the truth. That's honest. And then you set your intention. You're owning your medical condition. Now, with this medical condition, how do I now set an intention a year that I can make the best use of my life? Because your life is precious. Your life is important. You are divine. So even if you have a debilitating medical condition, this still applies. You still try and find the best way you can from that launch pad of the truth.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, David, because this, what we're talking here is about taking authentic, honest, empowered control of the things we can control in a balanced way. So many of us will encounter challenges in life that are out of our control. Yeah. So whether it's a medical health condition, financial circumstances, a loss of a job, a relationship breakdown, there are elements that other people have had parts to play in. But we can use affirmations and intention settings to get absolutely clear on the current situation and the elements of that are within our control. So, for example, something bad happens to us with our job, we lose our job. That's out of our control. But we can affirm there are elements in terms of my skill set, my knowledge, my work experience, my ability to move for a job, for example, that are within my control. And that can be an affirmation. And that almost like positive review that it takes in order to create that affirmation. I am in control of my knowledge, my skill set, all those things, then creates the authentic foundation to create a positive intention setting for your next job move, your next career move, for finding a new job. So within 12 months or whatever, within the next period, I'm going to find a job that is aligned with my values, my income goals, but then do that cross check of what am I going to do? How realistic is this, say in the current market climate, that I can achieve this?
So using your example is a really good example. If you lose your job, the first thing for you to be honest with yourself and setting your affirmation, is that because of me? Is that a poor performance? Do I need something to learn? And let's say it's nothing to do with you. The company, the other branch of the company lost money and they've closed down. So now that's the truth. That's your launch pad. Because when you do something like lose your job, the inner child will see this as their playground. They will come at you full force, saying, there you are, look, that's the evidence. It's always you. You're the victim. Pooh you. You can't cope. You've never been able to cope. You're unworthy. It will absolutely bombard you. And as you quite rightly said, what we're talking about now offers you clarity. So you can then say, no, the truth is, it was nothing to do with me. Actually, I was very good at my job. I was earning money. It's something outside of my control. Now, the next step is how do I do? What's my intention? So my intention could be, now you see right away that to me opens up such possibilities, because now you're freeing yourself to your creativity. Perhaps you might say, and I've got a client who's actually done this and doing this now, you know what? I don't want to go and work for somebody else. I've got this skill set. Why can't I set up my own? I've got these contacts. Why don't I set up my own company? And that's what they're doing. They're setting up their own company, and it's very successful. But they're doing it one step at a time. Because then you said something that the inner child was stepping. I will get a job in 6 months. You don't know that. That's wishful thinking. You can say, every day, I will make sure that I spend an hour doing job searching. Now you can do that.
Or upskilling.
Or learning a new career, or going back to university, or whatever. You can do that. So it's this thing that the inner child loves. It's like its playground. It loves to step in here.
So things to be aware of with the inner child narrative when we're doing this, using these tools, are very black and white thinking. You know, it's got to be this or it's got to be that. If it's any outcome, anything that's in between what I want, then it's not good enough. It's a catastrophe. Avoid the black and white thinking. Avoid the perfectionist thinking, which is similar, or the fairy tales thinking. Avoid rigidity. So this is important when it comes to intentions, that although, again, we have to be careful not to be too vague. There's a point of appropriate balance between being flexible with our intentions, so not setting intentions that are so specific and detailed, like it's got to happen by such and such a date, and it's got to happen by such and such a way, and I've got to be able to measure it by this metric. We have to avoid that, but also we don't want the intention to be so woolly that it almost gives us a get out of jail card if we kind of fail.
So that's the difference, I think, between setting a goal, which is like a straight line, and setting an intention, which is more like a wavy line. That as long as you have your eye on the intention, yi dao, qi dao, you have that flexibility. I know I use these analogies all the time. Being a Taoist, it's my home analogy. It's like a river. The river has the intention to flow to the sea, but it doesn't go in a straight line. Nothing in nature goes as in a straight line. It moves, it flows, and we should have the same. We have an intention. Do I really want to work for another company? Do I want to work for a big company? Why can't I set up for myself? Why can't I start a family business? See, that opens up all your creativity, your shen, your intention. All this new, my friend, we were talking about this. Let's investigate that, see if we can set up a partnership. It opens up all those possibilities. So that's a little bit of the riddle room.
And I think, David, the ultimate teaching here, just to conclude, is very much like, if we can start with this foundation of truthfulness and self-reflection, then it clears out of the way any self-doubt. By contrast, if we start with affirmations and intentions which are unrealistic, untruthful, then we are always going to experience that self-doubt throughout the whole process, which will undermine and de-energize us.
So that's one of the things you can test, Alex. If you look on my Substack journal post, normally as in the post, if it comes to me, I'll set an affirmation, affirm so-and-so, so-and-so. Now, when you read that affirmation, it should absolutely be in your sweet spot. You should say, yes, I've got no resistance to that at all. That's true. Now, if you read my affirmation and you go, whoa, now that means you don't believe it. And that's fine. You don't have to believe it. Now you should write your own affirmation. Go back to the truthfulness. What do I believe? What is the truth here? Now, the inner child will not want to show its head now.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't want, and it goes, I don't know. I don't know what I believe. You see, the inner child will now give you this, I don't know what I believe. It's just one of those things. Write down, I can't accept David's affirmation. Right. Please don't accept it. Now, write down an affirmation you could accept 100%, and you would say to your physical child.
Yeah.
And that will show you, it's like the inner child has to stick his head above the parapet then.
Yeah. But then it's such a worthwhile exercise because we're getting to that truth and honesty, which has to be the foundation upon which you do this work.
So for instance, I'm just thinking while I'm writing now, and I'm writing something. I said, affirm, I am a divine spirit. There is no one in the universe like me. No. Can you say that to yourself without any pangs, without anything tugging? If you can, that's the truth. Now you can build from that foundation. You are divine. There is no one in the universe like you. Now we can build. That must mean that your journey is unique. You can't compare yourself to anybody else, can you? See? Then again, that should say, well, that's obvious. That's the next step. And then you build on that one step at a time. But if you get that first resistance, you know that you don't truly believe this.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, David. Well, I really hope you enjoyed this teaching. And please also do subscribe to David's Substack blog. I will put a link in the show notes to that, a link for you. I really hope you have enjoyed the teaching. Please do share it with someone else who you think it may also benefit. Next week, David is preparing a beautiful new guided meditation on affirmations and intentions to help you with this subject. So do check that out next week. And finally, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We produce new teachings, long form teachings every Saturday, as well as 2 midweek short snippets of wisdom for you to enjoy. So do subscribe. We look forward to sharing with you again very soon. Bye-bye.